The thing that I feel about seasonality that I haven't heard a lot of other people say is not to forget the value that you can provide to the consumer after that seasonal period is over. The best deals online are not during Black Friday and Cyber Monday. There are great deals, but the best deals are going to be happening throughout the year.
So, Nick, we're going to do something this week that we've never done before. And that's repeat.
Are we?
Yeah, let's repeat an episode that we had before. So we're bringing back in an encore performance, Mike Lively from Slickdeals.
Oh, I love that episode. That was such a good one. And we very topically released that on Cyber Monday. And it was about seasonality as well. So what's the plan this time, Chuck?
Well, we thought let's go with the same idea and release it right around that BFCM, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and make that our episode, because what he had to say hasn't changed. How you are prepared, your site is prepared, you're prepared for the onslaught of traffic you're going to get during that seasonal peak period, whether for you that's holiday or Amazon Prime Day, or in your industry, maybe it's travel or healthcare and you're at enrollment period, whatever that peak period is. Do you prepare your site? I thought he had some great insights on that.
Yeah, no doubt. And that also reminds me of an episode that we recorded after that and released with Ellery Womack, where we talk about preparing for Black Friday. So if you're looking to add something else to your playlist, go find that episode and throw it into the listen next.
Especially if you're a retailer and your peak period is that Black Friday, Cyber Monday, you'll want to listen to this episode we're about to play, plus that past episode with Ellery. Hello, and welcome to The Frictionless Experience, the podcast where we lay waste to digital friction. I'm Chuck Moxley.
And I'm Nick Paladino.
On today's episode, we're continuing our deep dive into the 5 friction forces that are impacting your customers' digital experiences. And today we're going to be focusing on seasonality, which is perfect for today, given that it is the single biggest shopping day for many retail websites, Cyber Monday. Now, joining us today is Mike Lively. Mike is the Senior Vice President of Engineering at Slickdeals. Mike, welcome to the Frictionless Show.
Thank you for having me.
So, Mike, can you, because not everybody's probably familiar with what or who Slickdeals is, can you give us a kind of quick explanation of what you guys do and who you are?
Absolutely. So Slickdeals really sits at the intersection of commerce and social. So what we are most known for is our ability to source our community and our staff to find the best deals that are online at any given point in time, which this time of season, there's generally a lot of those. So our goal and our mission is to really get the best deals in front of users, regardless of the source.
Gotcha. So you're really a community, like a community of shoppers.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing that separates us out from like just going and searching for something on Google or any other like deal aggregation site. Is we have a community of over 10 million users that are also offering feedback of the quality of the deal, quality of the product, and quality of the merchant experience.
I'm pretty excited to be talking to you today because during a lot of that operational time at Home Depot, the first thing that would happen when we saw a big spike on Cyber Monday or Black Friday, hey, go check Slickdeals. Are we showing up somewhere? It was that was like the operational process. The first thing we would do, go check Slickdeals. So it's really cool to talk to you today.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had that interaction with several different merchants in the past. There has been a known Slickdeals effect at times. Less so now.
For sure.
Folks are getting their act together on the performance side, but that used to be a thing in the past.
Well, and for perspective, you all are one of the top 10 most visited websites on the web, right? According to SimilarWeb.
When we're in the Black Friday Cyber Week time of year, yes, we from the shopping perspective, we are one of the top sites in the U.S.
Gotcha. Okay. So you definitely have to deal with volume. So, and you've been with Slickdeals now for almost 10 years, which is very impressive. Tell us a little bit about your role and what's been your team's primary focus this year.
Yeah, absolutely. So like you said, I started at Slickdeals a little bit over 9 years ago. My focus has always been in the architecture and managing of technology. Over the last couple of years, I expanded my role and am overseeing most of engineering. But the most interesting thing that happened to me, and it kind of relates to seasonality, is about week two. We had our site dropped on the Bill O'Reilly show, circa this would have been around 2014, so a little bit more popular back then than maybe he was now. But it immediately shot our active users on the site at that moment up to about 45,000 users at just all at once. And I experienced the first uh, issues around the problems that we would have with seasonality. So completely unexpected. It was one of those things where we had no idea that that was going to happen. It just happened. And similar to what you were talking about at Home Depot, Nick, we were where is this traffic coming from? then we saw it and it was like, oh no. So it was a little bit of a baptism by fire in terms of getting our site ready for that massive amount of traffic. So yeah.
That's pretty cool because it's like that unexpected seasonality. But when you really think about it, what does that mean for our users? And in your world, it's obviously users that are like, oh, that's cool. Let me go check and see what deals exist. This is a great shopping stop for me to start. And so now I have a new home to be able to go find some deals. But in, retailers' worlds or the, banking industry or in hospitality, wherever it may be, when they have those sudden spikes that are caused by something, does that increase demand or drop demand based on the fact that that user that's coming to the site is just as meaningful as users that are organically coming to the site, right? Like, what did Bill O'Reilly actually do to be able to create the interest, and did that mean that those users were just as engaged as your other users?
Yeah, I mean that's a really good question. So that the answer to that is it really depends on the situation. Like in the case of Bill O'Reilly, he was mentioning us as a site that he visits frequently to find the best deals online. So when that happened, all of a sudden an expectation was created for uh, several thousand users of Slick Deals is going to be able to show me a good deal as well. So I think the for us, what we need to ensure of in that those either expected or unexpected periods of spikes is that we are able to offer a consistent experience that those that are kind of giving us that free marketing, in the case of Bill O'Reilly, have experienced in the past. We need to provide that for those users at that time as well. So it's really that consistency that I think is key from a seasonality perspective. Is can you offer the same thing at those times as what you would offer on a daily basis to your hardcore users.
Yeah, and that's a perfect summary, high level understanding of why seasonality is a friction force, because it's potentially bringing a lot of friction to your customer experience, and for many people it's the first time they experience your brand, and that can be brand damaging or brand building depending on how you handle that.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah.
So when you think about trying to provide that consistent experience, you're coming off again. This is for many, and I don't know if this is the case for you guys, but many retailers, this is the busiest day of the year. You're coming off potentially the busiest week of the year. How does your team prepare for those seasonal bursts at Slick Deals to deliver that same frictionless experience?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's definitely a high focus for us, and we really have three different periods like this. Obviously, for us, it's in particular Black Friday, the Friday after Thanksgiving. That is far and away our highest traffic period. Cyber Monday and the week following is close second. But then we also have Prime Day that Amazon started, and they just now are doing it in October in addition to July. So those are really the three highest traffic periods for us, and we use them to build on each other. So we leverage a lot of load testing to prepare for those Black Friday periods or excuse me, for those Prime Day periods where we're expecting an elevated amount of traffic. And it's not just load testing in the sense of let's just throw a little bit of traffic. Like we are simulating what we would expect to see over the course of Black Friday in our production environment, so we can see how is it going to react and how is it going to impact our users that are on the site right now in the middle of October. And that generally helps us find a lot of things that otherwise would have just gone unnoticed until it was too late, until we're sitting there on Friday trying to figure out how are we going to get our site back up and running. So that preparation is wildly important for us.
You know, it's interesting. We occasionally talk to somebody who goes, well, once you fix all these problems on your site, why do you need to keep doing the monitoring, keep doing all that? I wonder if somebody's wondering the same thing, right? If you do this load testing and you've prepared for the biggest day of the year, then why do you have to keep doing it throughout the year?
Yeah, and I'm sure Nick has experienced this in his career a lot, but very, very rarely does a website not change over the course of the year, right? We have a great team of engineers at Slickdeals that is constantly making changes, tweaks, improvements based on things coming from our business team, from our product team. So there will never be a point at which the site as it was on Black Friday of last year is going to be the same as it is on Black Friday of this year. So it's really testing through those changes, right? And it's not even just changes, but the landscape changes around you as well. Like, in fact, one of the things that we found out most recently in our most recent round of load testing was some issues and not issues, but things that we changed about our CDN layer. And all of a sudden now is a big difference. And that was the bottleneck that we discovered ahead of time that we could get resolved before it became a true problem for us. So it's important to just repeat those steps on a regular basis. It's like brushing your teeth. You can't just do it once and say you're good, because you're going to eat something after that, right? So you got to. It's a daily activity in that case, and in this case, probably not quite daily, but yeah.
I like that analogy on brushing your teeth, because brushing your teeth one time, it doesn't feel like you're really doing all that much other than giving yourself like a fresh feel. But that long arc, right? Then you have to go to the dentist every 6 months. If you only do one or the other, you're obviously going to have bad teeth. You have to do both. So you have like that load testing, that big check that's going to the dentist, and then you have your everyday activity. And, frankly, to your point, most sites nowadays are in like a microservices environment where they're changing multiple things a day, right, constantly. And so you have to constantly be validating that and understanding. And then that also just generally reminds me of an approach of destructive testing that I always loved. Intentionally break a service and see what happens. Do it in prod if you're feeling risky, but you could just do it in lower environments as well, and just intentionally break something and see what ends up happening, where failover happens, what ends up occurring. Because, even if you do really robust load testing, how do you know that the CDN isn't going to end up having some kind of backlog issue inside the logging that then creates some cascading issue that bubbles up into, I'm making it up at this point.
No, yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. You can only prepare for so much. Like the Bill O'Reilly case, that was an excellent example. Like at that point in time, we got more traffic than we would actually get during a normal Black Friday as well, at least at that time in Slickdeals history. So you do have to plan for those situations where you don't have enough resources to handle what is coming your way. Well, one of the features that we worked on for this holiday season is a revamp and sort of a test of a new search platform that we're leveraging. So you can go check that out. It's a semantic search, and that's one of the questions we're asking is if this service is not available, like what is the user experience we want to offer to our customer? Because it's those in these seasonal times where you're getting more users that you don't get on a regular basis. Maybe it's not your first impression, but it's a very rare impression for you. So you don't have much time with this individual to establish the value that you offer to them. So having those backup plans in place if that key piece of value you're wanting to offer for whatever reason just isn't available.
Now, Slickdeals is unique in that you're an aggregator versus a retailer. You don't actually sell products. So what are the specific levers you're able to pull to address these spikes and dips in traffic that come due to seasonality?
Yeah, that's a good question. It is a little bit of a different ballgame for us, and in many ways, it's actually easier because we. I guess there's two sides to the coin. The easier part about it is we aren't responsible for the cart. Right? So when a user comes to us, we are directing them to Home Depot or to any one of a number of merchants that are actually offering the deal for the consumer. But that's also the flip side of that is our success is now dependent on other merchants and their capabilities to handle that traffic as well. So we do have some amount of control that we can leverage in terms of what are we trying to push more traffic to. We haven't had a situation like this arise in quite some time where if a particular merchant's site was down, we could pull traffic away from them until they were back up, and then kind of go back into our normal mode or what have you. But those are some of the things that we have the ability to react to on a relatively quick basis.
And what have you observed? I'm curious if and it sounds like it doesn't happen often, but if you have a deal come up for another retailer and that site is down, do they then come back to your site and see if they can find the product somewhere else or a similar deal? Do they just bounce altogether? What happens to that traffic typically?
Yeah, for us, we generally will get that user back. That's the beauty of being an aggregator is our value isn't reliant on just one need, right? Like they can they are probably looking for something that multiple merchants could offer them, or they're just looking for some of the best deals. And if that one deal isn't working out well for them, there's another 99 on the backside of it, right? So for us, that is not as big of an issue as what I could see with an actual true retail site, where if your cart's not working, they're gone, and you probably don't see them for a while.
How do you work with other teams at your company your team? Let me going to start that question again. How does your team work with other teams at the company to prepare for these peak periods? For example, the SEO and the demand teams.
Yeah, it's a great question. So for us, these are ongoing relationships within our organization. We don't just, okay, it's a couple months before Thanksgiving, let's everybody talk to each other now. It's an ongoing conversation, right? So the biggest thing that is important for us to establish before we get into the seasonal periods is what are we doing from a marketing perspective? Like, what is our overall strategy, both from the business perspective, working with our merchants, but also from the consumer perspective of helping our consumers find what they need. What is that strategy? Where is the traffic going to be pushed to? And then that helps us from the technology side to understand where do we need to spend our time testing, what are the flows that we need to really ensure are operating at peak performance and are ready for that heightened amount of traffic.
So I'm curious if you've got some stories here, like what kind of problems have you been able to avoid by planning ahead for seasonality? An example of when you thought you prepared, but then something unexpected beyond Bill O'Reilly, and what was the impact of that?
Yeah, I don't have too many interesting stories from the business perspective. We've been doing this for quite some time, and honestly, so I joined 9 years ago, and the company at that time was still 14 years old. So, like we've been doing this for a long time. So the business side of things we have a pretty good grasp on that. We have run into technology issues in the past, however, and it's really the first few years that I was working with Slickdeals, it's like the biggest issue that we would have would just rotate. Like one year we bottlenecked on the database, and then we fixed that, and then that was obviously a huge focus for us for the following year to make sure that never happened again. We did a great job, but we did such a good job that we ruined our caching layer. So then we just had to continue moving up and down the stack. We haven't had significant technology issues for quite some time. So we're in a much better spot for that now than what we've been in the past. From the business perspective, I think some of the things that maybe we've ran across that are interesting is having a really good sense of where your traffic is actually going uh, does give you the opportunity to be a little bit more reactive and making sure you're getting the right message in the right spot for users. So we have a lot of metrics and tracking implement on the site, so we can see very, very quickly where are the users going, because sometimes the best laid plans from a marketing perspective will be completely ignored by their users, and they will go somewhere else on your site that you weren't anticipating them going to. So being able to detect that and uh, look at those experiences in the lens of, oh, this is getting much more traffic than I expected, and being able to adjust to account for how can we best talk to those users that are going to this place we didn't expect. And that actually does happen often for us, because one of the things that is very different for us versus retail is there's no surprises for the retailers in terms of the content available to them. Like uh, a retail store knows what they're going to be offering to their consumers on Black Friday. We have a pretty good idea because we have good relationships with our merchants, but we don't know what is the deal that's going to resonate the most with the community until the community starts voting on it the day before or the day of Black Friday, right? So for us, being able to understand where our users going is incredibly important, because it's probably far less predictable for us than it is for a general retail site.
That's pretty cool in general, just to think about. I mean, I'm looking at Slickdeals right now, and obviously it's a big moment leading up to the moment of the right now, but just the diversity of what is there and the juxtaposition. Like, I'm looking at a set of tools right next to a thing of Play-Doh. Like, that's what are we doing here? Like, side by side, same exact real estate.
Yeah,
That's cool.
yeah, that is something that we're talking about internally and have been talking about for quite some time. It's there's an interesting dichotomy of personalization versus opportunism. I
Yeah,
don't know if I'm making that word up.
no,
but
that's it. But I mean, frankly, this targets me perfectly. I don't know if you did that somehow, but I have a 8-month-old right now, and I love tools. Right, like this hit me. It's perfect.
yeah, yeah.
That was your customized journey, Nick. You just didn't realize it. That's a
what I'm
date on the
saying.
back end. Yeah,
I'm saying there's something cool happening here.
you're an audience of one. So
Every episode.
every episode we find a way to get the book in the title. I imagine there's almost an infinite number of journeys that customers could take. And the way you talk about it, is that more reactive? Like, you start seeing this particular journey get a lot of traffic and you go make adjustments, or is it proactive? Are you able to kind of analyze that in advance or based on past historical traffic and start to anticipate what you need to do in those journeys to make it the best experience possible?
Yeah, I mean, you want that to be as proactive as possible, right? Because you're always going to give yourself more at bats if you get started before the users are actually on the site. So we think about it more from the individual. Excuse me, from the. I'm going to start that over again. We think about it more from the template perspective, not so much from the individual deal perspective. Like, what are the things that we need to offer on our deal page template that is going to resonate with users that are coming here during Black Friday? Whether that's let's actually push our deal alert functionality, which you can use that to subscribe basically to new deals coming into the system that match whatever your search criteria is, or do we use it to push our newsletter functionality? And kind of what are the goals that we have as a business in general. So that's probably the primary way that we think about it. You do still want to think about it from the perspective of reactiveness, but what we are focusing on from the reactive view is leveraging a lot more machine learning, AI, and kind of behavioral, like, gymnastics to leverage the bulk of the traffic that we are seeing to help inform what do we do for the next person, right? Like essentially the machine learning side of search and personalization. That's probably the best way to handle that reactive piece, just because there's only so many hours in the day that you have available when you're in the moment, right? You don't have enough time to react quick enough often.
So then let's take that and push it back towards seasonality. What does it take to make sure that those new technologies are actually going to handle the volumes of Cyber Monday?
Yeah, and that's heading right back into load testing, right? So that's one good thing that we do around load testing that I would highly recommend to everybody is taking two views on it. You mentioned kind of this microservices world. In that microservices world, it's important to test your site as a whole. Like we have several different services on the back end that power Slickdeals, but we will load test Slickdeals itself in that production mode and see does it handle everything all together. But then we are also doing very in-depth load testing and performance testing on each of those services individually as well. And we probably do that much more often. It's usually easier to test at an individual service level than it is the full site. And so we do that a lot more frequently, and then we just follow it up kind of as we get closer to the holiday of, hey, now does everything working together perform well as well?
So for a retailer, they typically will consider a conversion a purchase. In your world, what do you guys consider a conversion? Do you have such a thing?
Yeah, so this is actually a very, very unique thing for us. And in our world, we're essentially just a very large affiliate marketing company. So for us, the conversion is still the sale on the merchant site, and we are pulling a commission from that sale. Which the challenge of that is we don't know when that happens very fast, because that's information that the merchant knows right away, but then we have to wait for the merchant to tell the affiliate network. Then we have to wait for the affiliate network to tell us. So oftentimes we don't have that definitive information about the conversion for anywhere from 24 hours to during this holiday period. That time can extend out to 7 days or more. And in some merchant cases, that affiliate reporting doesn't actually happen until like the item is shipped. And so it varies wildly. So we have to rely a lot more on kind of leading indicators, like did they click out to the merchant site, and then kind of understand from that what's the likelihood then of that click out to the merchant site resulting in conversion on the merchant site. And that's what we have to optimize towards in the very moment.
I think something that's really cool there then is you can start to measure the success of different merchants, right? So you're sending them 100. How many of them are sending you back 70 versus 60 versus 50 versus 95, right? So I think that's probably an interesting data point in its own.
Yeah, and that's something we track very, very closely, and we are able to glean a lot of information out of that.
Right.
It's not information that we can react to quickly. Like it's very much a lagging indicator for us, which is always a little tricky to deal with.
So what are some different strategies you've tried during off season to improve conversions then?
Yeah, a lot of it is really just it's not really that different for us. It's are we able to find deals that speak to the user that we have in front of us today, and what are the categories, what are the kind of deals that work the best for that individual user, and just trying to lean more in on personalization, and can we start to provide that one-to-one experience as opposed to just showing everybody the same thing. We're still very much at the front half of that journey today. That's something that we've been working on improving over the last year or so. It actually goes back even further than that. But so that's a big part of it. And then we're doing a lot of different testing all throughout the year around what are some of the marketing messages that work well for us over email, and then just kind of continuing to develop those campaigns So that's usually where our focus sits in terms of that user optimization.
Gotcha. And a factor, obviously, in site performance are third-party tags, especially during peak periods. Are there performance issues they present? And if so, how do you address those to minimize those performance issues?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. So what I have found in the last few years is the biggest issue that we do have during these holiday periods is actually it's third parties that are causing issues for our end users. Um, and if, for us, this sort of turns into a little bit of a non-issue because we do have the ability to detect when are those third parties giving us issues. I'll, I'll give a shout out to the Blue Triangle platform that helps us a lot with that. But then not just leveraging Blue Triangle to see how or what are the pixels that are causing us issues, but when we implement the pixels, we're implementing them in a way that we can very quickly turn them off, whether it be through Google Tag Manager or we have our own kind of backend platform that we can do that with as well. So we're able to react to that really quickly. And if a tag is being particularly problematic, we just turn it off. And then when we're back into a lower traffic period of time, or we hear from them that, hey, yeah, we had a problem, but now it's fixed, we can turn it right back on and continue to glean the value from that integration.
So no matter what time it is right now that you're listening to this, it's Cyber Monday and you probably have a tag issue going on right now because there's just so many things that go wrong. One of my favorite things to talk about with tags, if you have 100 tags and you expect 99.97% reliability on any specific tag, which is fantastic, that still means you have like 5 hours of downtime every week in some tags. Something is down, something is problematic, which then bubbles up to about an hour a day where you have a tag problem. Now, on top of that, let's add Cyber Monday's traffic. You probably have a tag problem going on right this second.
Yeah. Yeah. And that kind of goes back to what we were talking earlier about plan for things to not work. Like,
Exactly.
what are you going to do when that tag problem arises? Are you able to turn it off? If not, maybe work on that because you're not going to be able to have a tag layout that's perfect because you don't have control and you're relying not just on your own team to do all of this performance testing and things like that, but now you're relying on 100 different partners to do exactly the same thing. And if they don't, they can cause issues on your side, or if even if they do, like the best laid plans, right?
Right.
Can often fail. So yeah, that's a really good point.
And, on top of that, make sure that when they do fail, they're out of the critical render path. That's something that's just so key for every single site. If it's not providing something that the user expects, interacts with, or sees, they should not be in the critical render path, period. And so get them out onto the back. And, one thing that we hear often when we're talking about this concept is like attribution data. Oh, we're going to lose a lot of data because people leave early. Well, they're leaving early because you're slowing down the website and it's actually creating a worse experience. So if you just get them all out into the later side, you're going to keep more users and less bounce is going to happen. So we end up seeing that attribution data actually increases when you defer tags in mass as opposed to improves when you prioritize them. So it's one of those areas where marketers are always shocked when you kind of come through and you kind of say, hey, no, this is actually better for you. We're not just doing this for the tech stack.
Yeah, that's front end performance is one of the things that I just absolutely love talking about, and I'm sure you've seen this as well. But one of the things that consistently shocks me is that there isn't always a lot of thought that goes into how are these tags implemented across sites. Like even the instructions that you'll get from your partners of how to integrate their tag. We put a lot of rigor into reviewing that on the engineering side at Slickdeals to make sure, like, are they forcing us to put this into the critical path where and does it actually need to be there? And we've had a lot of back and forth with different partners to kind of adjust how they were asking us to implement the tag so that we can get it out of that path, just like you're saying. yeah, we've seen a ton of that. We have a lot of third party tags on our site, and sometimes you can't avoid it. Sometimes it does have to be in the critical path,
Right.
but then is it worth it? Is the question to ask. And if your site is actively experiencing an issue, is it worth it right at that moment? Because oftentimes, 99% of the time, it's fine. It's just, can you handle that 1% of the time, or even less than 1% of the time, where it's problematic?
Right.
That gives you just a ton of flexibility at that point.
So, Mike, what do people get wrong about seasonality in digital experiences? What's a widely held belief about seasonality that you fundamentally disagree with?
That's a good question. So I think for me, the thing that I feel about seasonality that I haven't heard a lot of other people say is, I not to forget the value that you can provide to the consumer after that seasonal period is over. Something I'll give you a deal tip. So this one's free. The best deals online are not during Black Friday and Cyber Monday. There are great deals, but the best deals are going to be happening throughout the year, and that's one of the huge value propositions for Slick Deals, is we will tell you when those deals are happening, and you don't have to just come and cross your fingers that we got something good on Black Friday or Cyber Monday. Like we'll have something good other times of the year as well, and making sure that the our users understand that, especially those ones that are coming just that one time a year, because Black Friday is always like that. That's the big shopping holiday. Can we convince them in that brief time that they're at our site that, you know what, you should actually come here next week as well, because there's going to be a lot of sales still going on, right? Oftentimes, I think we can get wrapped up on, can we close the sale right now, which is important. I don't want to discount that at all, but I think sometimes the focus can be too much on that and less on how can we retain or convert that user into somebody that's coming back to us on a regular basis. Like the perfect scenario is, can you recreate that seasonality at a time of your choosing? And someday I hope to unlock that. I'll be a very rich man, but we're still working on that.
Well, this conversation already has my mind spinning. I'm thinking of a couple of major purchases I want to do, so I'm going to go sign up for Slick Deals after this conversation, so I know when to buy. So, Mike, besides listening to every episode of the Frictionless Experience, how do you keep up with what's going on in the industry and stay abreast of current trends?
Yeah, so on the it's a whole lot of reading. I'm very much a reader and a podcast listener now. No, I'm just kidding. I've always been a podcast listener. So for me, I do tend to focus a little bit more on the technology and the performance side. And one of the best resources for me, honestly, Google came out with their Core Web Vitals over the last three or so years. And there's a lot of body of work over the importance of those and kind of how can you optimize your site to those metrics. So I spend a lot of time in reading in and up on that and ensuring, like, are the technologies that we use, are they helping us from like the CLS and LCP perspective? Are they hurting us? So a lot of time spent there, and then just tech blogging in general is something where I live in terms of understanding what's going on in the industry.
I don't know if it was a blessing or a curse, but Google adding SEO as a consideration with Core Web Vitals helps to create better experiences on websites, but then it also punishes those that don't necessarily have it. And they'll probably slap my wrist for saying punish, because it's rewarding those for doing well, is how they want to say that. But as you're going through with Core Web Vitals, what I find is very cool is it's pretty much the first time that we've been able to quantify the user experience, because the interactivity of FID/INP matters a lot. The stability of the site matters a lot. Those two metrics don't actually exist on the timescale that we would typically consider as like the milestones of, like, okay, you have DOM interactive, then, you have on load, then you have timed interactive, then you have, fully rendered or whatever. Like all these different metrics that used to exist as like a timescale of from start to finish. these exist outside of that, and that's a UX metric. That's not a performance metric, yet we can quantify it as a performance metric, and that's what helps us to make sure that we're doing right for our customers. Now, I've ignored LCP. LCP does exist on that, largest continuous paint does exist on that time scale, but you combine all three of those together. It's kind of a nice little silver bullet for us to just make sure that we have a stable experience.
Yeah, yeah, and I'll tangent on that a little bit. I do think this is actually with the core web vitals. It's the first time we had measurements that actually truly reflected user experience. Like in the past, we would look at page load time, and you can cheat. Like you can cheat really, really well on metrics like that, but you can't cheat around tricking people into thinking your site's not shifting around the cumulative layout shift when it actually is. Like you can't fake that. You can't fake when does the most important piece or largest piece of content show up on your site. So it did definitely raise the bar for what you needed to do to be successful from a user experience and perform to an extent performance perspective. But I think at the same time, it actually set a clearly understood bar that where you knew if you met it, you're actually truly making a difference for your users.
Yeah, and we also find a lot of business users latch on to it because it's easier to understand what it means and why, because it's not literally tangible. You can't go out and grab a website with your hands. I guess you could touch a screen, but it just makes sense, right? Like the interactivity, the stability, and the moment where users think you should be interacting, right? That's the three key aspects. It's really a nice little trinity.
Yeah. Yeah. And tie this back to seasonality a little bit. Those are things depending on what you are doing from a load testing perspective. You actually can measure those as a part of your load test as well. So again, the way that we do it is we're actually when we do that end-to-end test of just the full slickdeals.net site, we are actually pushing all of this load into production. So it is actually impacting our users. So we can go back and see in real time, like what, as we're running this load test and throwing an additional 40,000 users or whatever the number is that we choose into this site, how are our real users that are all still interacting with that same site? How is their LCP being impacted? How is their that's usually the one that'll move one way or the other, right? But sometimes I actually saw a CLS issue that was the result of a kind of like a race condition. So it was actually the first time that I'd seen CLS. Actually, it was impacted because of a slow connection. Like if somebody had a really fast connection to the site, they didn't experience the CLS because of the order of our JavaScript and how that ran. Was a user with a slower connection, aka somebody on mobile, it actually did have that CLS issue. So you'll discover really interesting things depending on what you are looking at from a telemetry perspective as you're running those load tests, preparing for the high seasonal traffic.
I like that term, Nick, the holy trinity of frictionless experiences. Core Web Vitals.
Yep, it'll work. And then we can get into get the microscope out, the vital scope out to, get into the depths of it, and leaning right into all your buzzwords as usual.
I'm sure Adam's taking notes right now. So, Mike, what's one final thought that you want to leave our listeners with?
I think it's to care about seasonality through the whole year, right? Don't wait until you're a month out from the traffic coming to ensure that your site is able to handle that traffic. On the business and product side, in my experience, they are thinking about this stuff all the time. And from the technology side of things, we should have that same rigor around the performance and scale aspect of seasonality as well.
That's a great point to leave us on.
It is.
So thanks for a great conversation, Mike. Where can listeners find you and connect with you?
Yeah, best place is probably LinkedIn. That is, I do check my messages on a pretty regular basis there. So if anybody has any questions or wants to talk shop from a performance perspective. I love doing it on that platform.
Well, thanks for joining us for this episode of the Frictionless Experience, a special encore performance with Mike Lively from Slickdeals about managing seasonality in digital experiences.
What a good one to recap too, Chuck, because it's just always topical. No matter what happens in the world around us with the digital space, these concepts are always true. You always have to know how to prepare. You always have to know how to think about this increased volume. And that's just what's so important. That's why we wanted to make sure we continue to show this episode and bring it back to the front of the queue.
True. Traffic never goes down over time, right?
Oh, yeah, no
it
doubt.
only gets more. All right, well, let's recap some key takeaways. So year-round preparation is absolutely critical. What really struck me was Mike's emphasis on not waiting until a month before peak traffic to start getting ready. It's about maintaining that readiness throughout the entire year and then keeping those cross-team communications flowing constantly.
Yeah, and something that's really important is to think about the third-party tags during the peak, because they have a peak too. And actually, the biggest headache during Black Friday tends to be those third parties, because you don't really understand the volume that they're also experiencing. It's not just your own that they're experiencing. So when Mike broke this down, even with 99.97% availability per tag, you're practically guaranteed to have an issue during high traffic. That really hits home, especially for me, because that's the life that I used to live. And the key to having good availability is to quickly ensure that tags are not problems and make sure that they fail gracefully. So when they do fail, it doesn't create a customer problem.
Well, and listeners, if they're Slickdeals fans, got some insider information that the best deals aren't actually during Black Friday and Cyber Monday. And that revealed a crucial point about thinking beyond just those seasonal peaks and focusing on how to keep those seasonal shoppers engaged throughout the year and constantly coming back.
Which of course brings up the importance of load testing and needing to go deeper than just full site testing. I was particularly impressed when Mike's approach about testing was both the complete site and individual microservices in production, because that's where a lot of things get missed. It gives you those real-time insights to know how actual users are impacted by the increased load.
And of course, there's always the Core Web Vitals, which I think this might have been the first episode of the whole show where we talked about that. And in that episode, this episode, as you brilliantly dubbed them, Nick, the Holy Trinity of user experience metrics.
Thanks, Chuck. One point that we should really start resonating here is that you always need a backup plan. It's not about preventing failures. It's about being ready to respond quickly when they inevitably happen. Having those contingency plans in place is crucial for maintaining a good user experience during peak periods.
True. It's, this episode from Mike really gave us some unique perspective on how you handle that seasonality, which is one of the 5 friction forces that we talk about. But it's not just about surviving those peaks. It's about building that robust system that can handle unexpected surges year round while maintaining a consistent user experience.
That's right. And even during those problems, you want to make sure that your user experience feels okay for your user. And that's what I mean by fail gracefully. But we hope you found that these insights as valuable as we did, and join us the next time for another episode of The Frictionless Experience.
And be sure to sign up for the newsletter if you've not done so, Frictionless, on the frictionlessexperience.com, so you get the additional insights from these episodes that we share every other week.